Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Where I go over all kinds of crazy stuff, but really trying to find what kind of focus I want for this channel. But basically today, I wanted to talk about the terrible nightmares, the horrible things that can happen to you as a landlord from my own experience. And honestly, I feel like my experience has been pretty good, where I've actually had little trouble. And I think a lot of the reason is because the tenants I've had have been from a wider community, like friends of friends, and I feel like once, I guess partially my one of the benefits of me being the person that is doing the background checks and meeting with the tenants, rather than some rental agency, my intuition and my ability to get good tenants, and then again my interaction with them as things go wrong, if I think I'm doing a decent job, that they're willing to recommend friends, and once you get good tenants in, they're kind of like finding, for me at least, they're finding the next good tenant to fill them in, and it's worked really well. And but there are some things that have happened. One story in particular where things did not go ideally. In a certain sense, it ended in an eviction. I wouldn't say it was a typical eviction, and I like to think some of that was because of the way I handled the situation. And uh, I think things went well, all things considered. But basically, I've done a video on mobile homes, and this was right after I purchased my first mobile home. Um, I actually kind of decided to, after I saw people applying, and I was realizing that as rental properties go, at least in my experience, the type of people that apply for a mobile home as a rental, opposed to a all my other properties are single family or duplex or triplex. Um, Mobile homes, they're different type of people in general. They tend to be a little bit lower class, and they tend to be fairly desperate. Their credits tends to be horrible, and um, it's a very interesting experience. But I kind of honestly felt a little bit. It's interesting as you meet these tenants and they're coming into your house. You hear some of their stories. Some of them you think it's their own fault in a lot of ways. Like, it's hard to feel bad for them. Other ones it's really easy to feel bad for, because um, I mean, it's just sucky things happen to people, and as much as I'm sure there's something they could have done about it, it's hard to really blame much of it on them. And um, one of the people that was coming in, I kind of decided I for this one unit, I was going to give a break, and I knew that it was my own uh, neck on the line in a certain sense by giving someone a break. I wasn't going to be better if it didn't turn out, and um, kind of, yeah, I wanted to use this mobile home as a potentially giving back. I wasn't going to necessarily choose the the uh, optimal in a certain sense. I don't think I actually turned anyone good down. It's just that I settled faster than I would have for this one, and my justification was I kind of wanted to just help someone out. I felt like things had worked out well with rentals for me so far, and I was gonna be willing, hopefully not have to take any kind of hit, but I was gonna be willing to do it in on this particular purchase, or at least this particular rental cycle. And so I went ahead with this one girl, and um, she seemed fine. She seemed happily responsible. I think she was like 19 or something, like unusually young to be out on her own. I could tell it seemed like um, she was like pretty mature for her age and had dealt with a lot. And uh, her credit was bad, but it seemed like she had a job. Seemed like it would work. But she had a she had to pay rent at her old location, and so I told her I would work with her for first month rent if she would paint on the inside of the unit, knowing that by saying that she could be a terrible painter, things could go south. But like I said, she seemed happy with it, and I really didn't know what was going to happen, but I was going to try to give this girl a break. I really wanted her to tell me that she was comfortable. I didn't want to be pushing her into something that she couldn't afford. And so the whole time I was like, what do you think? Will this work? Letting her, as best I could, letting her own it rather than like I would trying to make sure even not only owning it in the sense that yes I can afford that, but actually like asking and like are you sure? Is it like is something else we can do? And she would have agreed to pay first month's rent. It was the fact that I'd asked, are you sure you're comfortable? And she said no. I was like, okay, let's work for a deal. Work out a deal. If you paint, I'll buy the paint and everything. If you paint, we'll count that as first month's rent. Well, almost towards the end of the first month, painting was going okay, but she then asked if the next month could be postponed, and this did not sound good to me because she already wanted to pay for first month rent. The fact that she couldn't pay for the next month's rent after we'd already negotiated and made things easier on her because I wanted to make sure she could afford it. Um, I basically went and asked her, I was like, hey, are you sure you want to live at this place? Um, like, is this gonna work? And she basically said no. Um, and so I got a halfway painted house because she wasn't done yet. And um, fortunately, she left without really destroying the place at all. And she left halfway happy, which is really cool. And she even apologized, which in some ways she had totally blatantly, explicitly agreed. There's a lease, a contract, everything was so clear. She had every right to apologize, but at the same time, I don't necessarily expect that. Like I said, I feel like there's some ownership on my part. I'm not an idiot. Going into this kind of stuff, you kind of have to have lower expectations. I mean, but yeah, she ended up moving out. She even came back. She had some of my paintbrushes from trying to paint that weren't left in the unit. Where she was living was farther away. She actually drove back and gave me my paintbrushes back, and that's when she actually apologized and she was happy. And I was trying to let her know, like the whole idea in my mind was this was going to be more of an outreach in a certain sense. Like I wanted to help somebody out, and I don't really know if I did because she didn't actually live there, and she put some work into something that she really didn't see a ton of benefit from. But I think all things considered, as far as evictions go, we both won because evictions can be terrible. Um, you know, uh, you really want to follow the letter of the law and all that stuff. I didn't have to give her an eviction notice, and she hadn't completely moved in, so it was easier for her to get out early. And I ended up finding tenants, actually raising the rent more and finding decent tenants that ended up staying there for I think another 2 years. But that they came in quickly. That was the thing that surprised me. One of the things with mobile homes was, at least in my area, the demand is very high. They can't actually afford it, but everyone wants to move in. And there's actually like you can charge more than they can afford, and a lot of these people will go for it. It's kind of an interesting situation. I hate to say it, but stereotypically these people do not know how to take care of themselves on average, and you really have to be really selective because it's just a lot of people that are not going to treat your property well. And there are good, awesome people out there. There's plenty of very respectable people that are not the stereotype, that just want the independence and the low cost. Like I live in a college town. People that want to, possibly grad students that want that, like I said, independence, want a fence yard, want to have a dog or something like that. A mobile home can be a good option for the cost. It's one of the few places that uh, can, without costing you an arm and a leg, you can afford to actually have a pet. Grad students can be a great resource. But especially vet med, I think those are kind of like the vet med students. I think those are kind of like the stereotypical, quintessential, like perfect tenants. As another stereotype goes, they just tend to be good tenants. But I've never actually had one. I've just heard that rumor. But anyway, yeah, that is my worst story. The only time I've ever had to evict someone, and of course I use evict very lightly in the fact that we kind of came to an agreement. It was in contrary to the lease we had signed, but we both agreed that, um, you know, I asked her, "Is this not going to work? I don't want you to, I don't want to be making your situation worse." And she basically said, we both agreed. I guess something had happened with her grandma where she was in the hospital or something, and she wanted to be there anyway, so she would have been far from her grandma, and just helped make the situation obvious that she shouldn't be there. It was not what I was expecting. Her painting, honestly, was mediocre at best, not surprising. But um, uh, could have been a lot worse. And I ended up getting tenants in quickly. Ended up kind of making money in a certain sense because, like I said, I ended up charging more because I realized it's a first rental. I undervalued the unit, and um, yeah, just I underestimated the demand for something like that. And so it was a good learning experience on many ways. I don't actually regret it. And Anyway, that's my story. I don't know if that's probably the worst thing that's happened. It's kind of weird because like I was going into it thinking something like that would happen, but it wasn't a surprise necessarily. But I was hoping it wouldn't have worked out like that, but it did. I think some of the other worst things are sewer stories, and they're kind of worse on a different level. Um, but oh, actually, I've got another good story to you. But yeah, this was my only interaction with having to boot someone from their house. I did not follow necessarily the practices that I would advise someone else. I would advise someone to, before you ever rent your unit, to look up the laws in your area and make sure that you know what you have to do if you have a tenant that's not paying. A lot of times, like eviction time doesn't start until you post on the door, something saying you owe rent and all this kind of fun stuff. You got to follow. You could really get screwed, and delay your ability to get paid, or even if this person's never going to pay, get a good tenant in there by not following and knowing what the laws are in your area. So this is not a good example to follow. This is just a story, giving a certain perspective of just one of the things that's happened to me. And Anyway, um, yeah, I'm curious if you want to hear more stories. I think I might be able to. There's more interesting stories in this one. I don't know why I started with this one, um, but I think it was the first one that came to mind. But I've got worse stories. Not that that's what people want to hear, but I do not regret owning rentals. Financially and like self-improvement wise, it's been very rewarding. It's been rewarding to try to accomplish something that I wasn't sure if I could do. And uh, Anyway, this video is probably long enough. That's my quick, well, not so quick, story on the only person I ever had to evict, and the basic rundown of what happened.